In this video, we will look at the doors. So let's open the blueprint. It's here in the level assets. Doors, we have door and double door. We open it up. Part of its logic is quite the same as for the switches. Open, we check if it is locked to a key. We cast to first-person character, check if the first-person character got the key. If not, the message is that we need the key. Then we check open close state. So if it is closed, then we go to open. If it is closed, we go to close. By the way, this break here, because this could have been directly, right? So we need this separation for this start open. Because if it's because on event begin play, if we want this door to be opened by default, first we check if it is switched or not. Because if it is set to a switch, then we shouldn't. Well, this will be taken care by the switch, basically, this way. And then, based on open close state, we will open it or leave it closed. So if its open state is 0, nothing will happen. If it's 1, it will open it. And it will open it from here, regardless of the keys, because the first-person character on the begin play will probably not have the key, for example, or something like that. Anyway, this is necessary for that. And here, real quick, here we can see switch on integer. The sound is the value range is 0 to 1, but you can extend it and add more sounds. So but I have just one, and this is the sci-fi sound for the door. You can add more sounds, and you can add a pin here and get another sound. And this way, when you set the door in the scene, you can choose the sound that you want to play for the door. We set open close state to 1 and move the component. Now this move component moves our door here to from door initial location, which is stored in the beginning here, door get relative location, and set this variable here. This is needed in case you will add you can do this also in the scene, like here. This is how the staircase, like if we take a quick look, this is also the door, and this. So here in the scene, if you drag this down, you can change the mesh, right? And if you have a mesh for a different mesh, right, for the door, first of all, you can create instances, like right click, create child blueprint class. You have this, and inside you have nothing going on in the event graph, because it will use the logic from the main blueprint it belongs to. You can add things though if you wish, and here you can change the modals for the door. So in case you have, and you probably will have, different modals for the doors, so what you do is you create a child blueprint, and here in the child blueprint you can change the mesh for the door, and you will have a child blueprint with a different modal, and you will adjust but you can do this also in the scene. here, right? You can scale it and do whatever. And also you need to adjust the dynamic obstacle. This is important. If we look at the blueprint, here is dynamic obstacle. This is needed. Okay, whatever is operating it. It's not. Oh, okay. You see, it pushed me away. If you don't have this dynamic obstacle, even if the mesh is set to be the dynamic obstacle, it will go through, unfortunately. So you need this box collider. And we have also the box trigger. So the box trigger is necessary because, well, we won't see it here, but here we're moving the door. So it will move the door and the dynamic obstacle box collision. But the trigger box will remain in place. And it is set, as I probably have mentioned, to ignore visibility, which we use for shooting, and block the camera. It ignores everything else, of course. So we move the target location from the initial relative location. So it was stored so that, you know, if you change, if you want to adjust the position of the door relatively in here, this takes care of that. So we get the initial relative location and we add open direction to it. The open direction we can see in the details, in the scene here. If you change this from, you know, like this, it will open to the side. And if you change this, well, if you get it back, simply the whole thing is one of the point. You can get it back, you can get it down, and you can scale it. However, this will stretch the textures, of course. So you might need different mesh. Like here, I'm using a different mesh, and shouldn't do it this way. We simply will need to adjust the trigger. It becomes a lift. Okay, and there's also open rotation. So the we're not storing the initial rotation. If you need that, you can do that, and also store the initial rotation and combine rotators. It's called like this, combine rotators. Most likely you will not need that, but in case you need that, since you can simply rotate the whole actor, this way it will not be necessary. The time, open close time, open parameter. This is the speed. So if you set it to 3 seconds, for example, you can see it's really slow. Next, if it is set to close, then we should close over a delay, right? We also need to check if it is switched, just to avoid any errors, like you forgot that you assigned it to a switch and you set it to close. It shouldn't close independently if it is set to a switch. The switch should take care of it. Otherwise, you will have the door closed and the switch will remain open. After that, we have the same thing as before for the switch, right? Because let's get a new door here. Again, same thing. We have the control, right? So if we set it to close over a delay, and we set this to a positive value, simple delay will start working. And if I open it, close and open it, it will then close almost instantly, as you can see. However, we can use this delay if it is set to triggered. Let's see to this logic here. Trigger. So we check if the trigger is valid. So we need trigger volume. Trigger volume. Put it here. And once we specify this, this will start working already. We also need it set to triggered. Of course, instead of checking for this, here we can simply check if the trigger is valid. However, this separation gives you the possibility to open it yourself or to open it from a trigger. However, if you want it to work only from the trigger, you will want to switch this on. This way, when I try to open it, nothing happens. But when I use the trigger, it opens. And this way, since we don't have any control over it, we can use our adjustable delay. And this is very handy because, for example, like in some old classic games, and we all know the game that I'm talking about, we can set this to be like a secret door, right? So we open it and then we have to, make it in time before it closes. Otherwise, it is closed and we cannot go through. We go back and it works again. Now how that is done, let's go back. So here on event, on actor begin overlap with the trigger here, right? This trigger, we go to open. And during closing, we are setting our close state to 0. The door component, we move it to initial location, and the rotation will be 0. And if you will be storing that, you will add the initial rotation here. Same open close time. And here, the sound, same thing for the sound. However, there's also this connection here that resets this do once thing. So if the trigger is valid, we bind this event on actor begin overlap, and when we overlap, it opens. However, we do this only once, so that the door does not get triggered when we walk over the trigger again while it is still open. And when it closes, and this logic happened, this gate resets, and this can happen again. You see, nothing happens, but then after it is closed, we can open it again. So if we take a look at the double door, it's exactly the same, only we have two objects to move, and it's quite self-explanatory if you go through this. Oh, this thing is that I also need to mention that when we close the door, first of all, we go here and stop this movement, and when we open the door from here, we stop this movement. To make sure that when we open and close the door, those logics are do not continue to happen. Okay. So in the next video, we will take a look at our object movers.